Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Southampton Way Podcast. This is episode 10. Would you believe we've hit a nice double figure? Thank you. I just want to start actually with a quick thank you. Seeing as we've hit 2 digits and the listening numbers haven't plateaued at all. You all seem to really be enjoying it. We have a lot of fun making it. So if you just keep on listening, keep on showing the support you have, then it makes it all worthwhile for everybody. It's really good. Really good to have you joining me this week to not only review the Tottenham game at the weekend, the mad 6-goal thriller. We'll also go through a bit about England, and then we will look forward to sort of beyond West Ham, because we'll cover that next week, but we'll sort of look to potentially next season. Who out of the 30-man squad will still be here next year? Yeah, so joining me for it is football podcaster and broadcaster Martin Sanders. Martin, thank you very much for joining me, mate. Always a pleasure. First of all, start with how on earth what did you make of that game on Saturday? That was nuts.
Josh could see it. It was a nuts game, wasn't it? Wow. Wasn't surprised really at how the game unfolded. I was like you. We spoke before we come on air here, and we were talking about that team lineup, and just think again, I was really concerned about the lack of creativity and where was the pace going to be in the side. We're going to be so reliant on those fullbacks. And having watched Spurs the week before, I really felt that they were there for the taking. I felt that there was an opportunity. I think as that game unfolded, there was no doubt that there was an opportunity to give them a really good game. They looked fragile, didn't they? They didn't look at the races at all. And I think we played into their hands in the first half with that selection. We were so pedestrian again with the play of Ali Nusin. I like Stuart Armstrong's, but it's a very safe player. He's not going to commit people. And I think just at this stage of the season, it's that opportunity where you really have to have a go at it now. You have to really take the game, because nothing to lose. We have to take games to teams, and we have to try and win games. I actually feel, after watching that final 15 minutes on Saturday, that I think we've got players that can really make a difference in that squad. I just think they need to be utilised now, and he really needs to, I think, grow a pair and go for it. Come on, Ruben, let's have a go. It's not worry about losing games. West Ham, we have to go to them. I'm going to keep it tight for a bit. Let's just try and win some games, because scored 3 goals at home. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. It's almost like you want him to let the reins off a little bit and do something a bit outlandish, because that's, like you say, it was almost like he was trying to play it safe, but it seems very counterintuitive, especially against a very negative Spurs team. I had a quick chat with Benji right for the Daily Echo before the game when the lineups come out, and we were just chatting about the where the goals were going to come from, and neither of us saw it. Benji said, and I agreed with him at the time, and to be fair, to an extent, still now, he said we would have had to have been perfect to get 0-0. With that front four, and to be fair, he wasn't wrong. If we'd stayed like that the whole game and we weren't forced into subs through injury, and same with Tottenham and circumstances of the game, we probably would have been happy with a 0-0. Keep it nice and tight. We had to let go, didn't we? In that second half, we had no choice. But yeah, I mean, a word for the subs, by the way. I thought Maitland-Niles did a really good job coming on. I've read a stat actually regards to the substitutions. It's the second game that game at the weekend was the second game in Premier League history to see both sides make substitutions, 2 subs each before half time. The other one was Newcastle against Wigan in April 2006. So yeah, those are the only 2 games that's ever happened. So I thought, in the circumstances, Maitland-Niles did really well coming on. I mean, Sally did what Sally does. He's pretty solid. You can tell he's still naive in parts, but we know that. We know what we get with Sally now. And yeah, I mean, apart from those who had to come off and those who replaced them, did you have anyone in the starting 11 that you well, first of all, who was your man of the match, and second of all, who sort of stood out from that starting 11? Because for me, I thought Theo Walcott was outstanding.
Theo Walcott for me, he was man of the match by a country mile for us. I thought he was outstanding. showed what he showed in the recent games for us. Real leadership, but real quality when we needed it. And I thought Romeo Lavia, I talk about him on this podcast all the time. He is some player. I'm absolutely to sit and watch him every week. The pass that he's made for Walcott to set the Adams goal up, he's taken out 3 players with a one pass. Exactly what we needed against Brentford was somebody that could find a killer pass. And Romeo Lavia does that in an absolute abundance. It's just an incredible pass. And Theo's bang on it because he looks fit. He looks like he wants to wear the shirt. He's got a bit of passion about him, and it was a great goal. He did really, all from Walcott and Lavia. And I think Lavia is a top player. A stand out for me. And James Ward-Prowse, a lot of people will talk about him not being a leader, not having bottle. Mate, he showed he had real serious bottle there at the end, didn't he, with that penalty? He took it so well against his best friend, someone that he spoke about in the garden with the penalties and stuff. And no doubt Fraser would have saved many of James's penalties, I would have suspected, in the garden. But Prowsey, mate, you were absolutely superb. You for me, you emphasise everything we're all about at the moment, and just trying to bring everybody together. And he works hard for us, and thank the Lord we've got Prowsey with us.
Yeah, it's almost hard to imagine the team without him now. I don't imagine. I don't even want to think about where the sort of situation we would be in this season if we didn't have him, especially with the goals he's been providing and everything around that. Theo was outstanding when I had him as my man of the match. I thought he was brilliant. Something about playing against Spurs in it with Theo. It doesn't matter. He could, I think you could wheel him out when he's 80 and he could put in a performance against Tottenham. I think age doesn't seem to bother him, but he deserved his goal. Everything around it as well was brilliant. His movement, it just showed that now experience that's been lacking. And to be honest, when I looked at the lineups, I thought the only true threat we're going to have going running towards the goal probably would have come through Theo, which is saying something for a player that many had written off before the season, and to be honest, myself included, didn't really fancy him. But he's really showing why we don't get paid to make those decisions, why we're in somewhat naive through the passion that you have as a fan. But I don't know. Theo was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Again, worth making Niles. It was a real shame to see Bella Kotchap fall to the shoulder again. He seems to struggle with that, and Bednarek. I don't know how certain people feel like this, but he is back on the grass with Poland, so that one's nowhere near as serious as first thought. So it looks like he'll be back in the starting 11 against West Ham. It was interesting. The way we set up before the game was much like Brentford, wasn't it? I mean, I walk into the ground, all I heard was people queuing up for the programmes and getting the burgers and looking at the lineup and going, why is Moyes starting? Why is Moyes starting? He did all right in the first half, but for me, he's a nothing player. He takes up a space where someone like what we were talking about before, Martin, someone like Charlie Alcaraz, should be there. What do you think? Why at this point are we still persisting with Moy, and what do you think in your head Sellers was thinking when he's picking a starting 11 with 4 players who don't really score any goals against the Tottenham side that are clearly weak?
Josh, I think it's baffling that he's still getting games. I think we spoke about him a bit on the podcast last week, and I can't remember who said it. One of our guests said it last week. He spoke about he couldn't understand why he's still in the starting 11. At this stage of the season, we can't afford to be cautious now, especially in the final third. You have to play the players that are going to give you a chance to win games now, because we have to win games. And we know that our defence is leaky. We're fragile at the back, and we saw that from that early goal we conceded. Well, that late goal and the first goal in the back end of the first half on Saturday was just we're so fragile, and we will let goals in. So, and obviously we don't score loads, but you've got to give ourselves a chance in the first place. Charlie Alcaraz has been superb for us since he's come in. He's been a bright spark against Leicester. I thought he was brilliant. I know wasn't great in between, but he's been good. He's been good for us, and he looks like he's going to get a shot off. He looks like he's going to create something, and he's not scared to take players on and have a go. And we need that now. You got to. Andy News, he got to get rid of him from the starting 11. In my opinion, I wouldn't pick him again. If he wants to put him on the bench, fine, but just don't put him on the pitch. Just get him out of the way. He's not a player we need in the side right now. We need match winners. He's playing in the 10 position. And whenever does he create anything? When was the last time he set a goal up? When was the last time he played a killer pass? He doesn't. You can't have someone in the side to track people around. Get Alcaraz to work harder if that's what he needs, but he does that anyway. I just think Charlie's a far better option for us. And those substitutes the weekend were real key in the game, weren't they? Like Silamana's come on, he looked hungry, he took people on, he drew fouls, and we've been crying out for that all game. But why Ali Noose is in that starting 11, it's baffling, mate. And that's what concerns me with the final fixtures. If he's going to continue to make ricks like that, it will cost us games, in my opinion, as a fan. And I think you'll probably agree with me.
I do. I completely agree with you. The Suleimana one not starting was the one that really, really surprised me. To play, like we said before, we come on to play one or the other is frustrating alone. But when you play both of them together, you feel like you lose so much. And it made me think about the January strategy, bringing in Kamaldeen. What position were we looking to strengthen? Did we really look at areas like the one that Samuel Edozie was occupying and say, yeah, Sam's nowhere near good enough, we need to replace him? Or would it not have made more sense to say, right, well, Sam's developing, so let's bring someone who can rotate with him? Because he just it's such a shame that he's nowhere. I put on Twitter before the game, I mean, for me, Mislav Orsic, Joe Aribo, and who else was it? I put Mislav Orsic, Joe Aribo, and Sam Edozie are head and shoulders above Moyeli Nusi, Sekumara, and Adam Armstrong, in my opinion. I mean, I would have any single day of the week, I would have them in the team over them, and it purely because even if you're not guaranteed a performance out of them, that element of changing a game. To have none of them on the bench is wildly frustrating. I was even frustrated when Sekumara come on instead of Paul Onuachu. But I mean, at least he had that good little knockdown for Theo, and he wasn't dreadful. I'll give it to Mara. He wasn't dreadful when he come on. He was actually okay. But yeah, it's some of the decision making is baffling. And you mentioned about Moy sort of tracking around there. You probably had a better view of the Pedro Porro goal from where you were, because I'm in the northern, so I was the other end. Who did you have at fault for that? Because from where I was sat, it looked like no one tracked him back, but on the replay, it kind of, because you didn't see the second half of the pitch, it just looked like Perrault got completely sucked in and lost.
Yeah, he did. He did. Perrault got sucked in, and he was ball watching, and he didn't pick him up back post. But Moy's got to go with him, surely. We've got to be at least track. There was so much space, and you could see it opening up, couldn't you? As they were attacking, Porro's made the run, and I'm like, pick him up. He's got so much space, and Moy's, he talks about Moy's work rate, but he doesn't always track back. There's a lot of this all the time. He looks at other players all the time. I don't honestly think his attitude's that good at times. Perrault's just he's still young and he's getting better, but he's got a rick in him. And it was just like one of those lacks of concentration, and he just didn't look over his shoulder. The communication wasn't there. But the pair of them have just got, you've got to be talking all the time. Even with playing at Sunday League level, you talk all the time. You're trying to organise people, making sure people track runs. And it was just one of those really silly lapses in concentration for me.
Yeah, I think there was a bit of both. Like I say, from my angle, because I saw everything sort of going forward from behind Tottenham's defence, all I see is Pedro Porro making that run, which he'd made about 5 times before, by the way, in the same game, and we didn't learn. But I saw Pedro Porro making that run. I see the defence scrambling to try and cover that Kane run where he could make that header. And then I seen he was in acres of space. I didn't even see who should have been tracking him. I think it was Moy, but I don't want to be finger pointing if it wasn't. But as far as I was aware and what I could see, that was Elyounousse's man, and he just didn't bother tracking. And I mean, regardless, stupid goal to concede. Che popping up with the goal was a bit of a shock, especially so fast after half time. I mean, he did his best to miss it, bless him. It was off the post and in, but he did actually get the goal. I mean, that was you must have. I mean, that was again down your. I mean, you got a lot of action down your end, didn't you? But you must have just come back from your half time slash with a hot dog or something when Che popped that in, didn't you?
The kids weren't behind me kicking the chair. They found me behind the kids kick the chair all the time. Actually, the second half, the kids weren't there. I was like, oh, happy days. So I was like really enjoying the second half. It was a much far enjoyable second half. But yeah, all the action was down our end. Shea, I thought, worked hard the weekend. I'm glad he got his goal. Really glad he got his goal. He deserved it. I know he's had a barren run, hasn't he? And hopefully he'll be able to get a few more now. But like you said about Sakimara, I thought he come on and done a good job actually the weekend. First time I've seen a bit more about him. He's working a bit harder. I think he's learning the league a little bit more now. It might be a bit too late for him, but there's no sign of Onuachu, is there? Again, he's not come on. You talk about that recruitment in the window, in the January window, and you do have to question what went on there and what the thought process is. You know, how much has Nathan Jones had to do with that? You know, there's a massive panic buy with Onuachu. We needed a striker. I know that we spoke many times about who we would have gone for, but we're stuck with Shea, obviously Sakimara, and Adam Armstrong every now and then he'll get a run, no doubt, between now and the end of the season. Obviously, there's Onuachu. Will we see anything from him?
I bloody hope so. I mean, that was the sub I was crying for at half time. So let's get Torpor on and cause some havoc because obviously they'd had a defence that was already disturbed by injury and Ben Davis going off and things like that. And yeah, I just thought, Torpor, get him on, see what happens. But I mean, like you say, Sakimara was pretty decent. It wasn't a dreadful cameo that he made, so can't complain too much with that. I mean, apart from obviously Harry Kane had the free header, which was, it was a shame, but I mean, it's against, Maitland-Niles isn't the centre back, is he? Bless him. He was only trying to do a job. Unmarked Perisic, good finish, can't really complain. But I mean, on paper, we've conceded 3 goals from 3 shots on target, so it's a bit of a stinger. I don't think Bazunu could have particularly done anything with any of them. I'm not going to put blame on the goalkeeper for that. I think it was defensive errors. But again, most of those defensive errors actually led from the midfield. I don't think the defence were too much at fault for the goals themselves. But I was concerned when we went 3-1 down. I did think it was game over. But we did sort of have that heart to go and get the second and right at the death of the third. What did you make of that penalty call at the end? Because you're a lot closer to it than I was. I had no idea what was going on, frankly.
Kind of wanted to get back and watch it at home because I was desperate to see what happened with the penalty. It looked quite soft from where I was. I've got to be honest, in live, I thought, wow, yeah, it's gone down quite easy there. How much contact was there? And when you see it back, there wasn't. We got a bit of luck there. I think, it was nice to get a bit of luck because we don't get loads, and we've had a couple in a couple of games of the Man United game. Things went our way a little bit, and again the weekend. But let's talk about the penalty and how good it was. Massive pressure moment for him. Talk about all these people saying he ain't got any bottle. Massive bottle. He's down there. Everyone's there, and getting a point out of it was going to be massive in the end of the situation. We were being 3-1 down, but he took it really well. He took it really, really well. Chuffed to bits, he scored it, but Christ, it did it erupt down our end. Wow, haven't seen it so noisy down our end for a while now. So down there in the, I've got to take my kids. I'm quite close to the family enclosure, but outside of it, it's usually fairly quiet. Most of the kids are on their iPads most of the time, but not my kids, but the kids around us usually are. So it was nice not to see the kids on the iPads and wanting to watch the football. That was the highlight of it, really.
Yeah, it was a great It was to see it go in was fantastic. Oh, I think everyone's nerves were jangling a bit. I was even thinking, oh, please, just take this pressure off of Prowse, give it Maitland-Niles, because I know he can take a good penalty. But for him to say no, I'm still going to take it, and I'm going to take it against someone who I know very well and knows me very well and knows where I put my penalties. That had to be millimetre perfect, and what a penalty! Fair play to him. It was a lovely little embrace between him and Fraser at the end as well. You're right in the nostalgia. It was lovely. See the big man back. It got a great reception as well, which is good. And to get a point against a so-called top six side is always positive, isn't it? The big six. It did sort of prompt an Antonio Conte meltdown, which was hilarious. But what did you make of that? Do you reckon he's trying to get himself the sack, or is he just complete enough of it?
I think he looks like he's had enough of it for sure. I've listened to a lot about it this week about what he said, but I think he's been brewing to say that for a while now. I think he just totally lost the plot, really. He said exactly what he was feeling, but I think he probably does want the sack, to be quite honest. His contract runs out at the end of the season, and obviously get a bit of a payout if they do sack him now. It'd be interesting to see what Levy does there, whether he does make a change. I know that Tottenham play a relegation rival in their next game, which is Everton. So I'm kind of hoping that they do sack him and they bring another manager in before the Everton game and get a new manager belts, to be quite honest, because at the moment they're an absolute soft touch to play against. He's got all the players in the dressing room. They're all talking about wanting another manager. It doesn't seem like it's a great atmosphere there. He'd be best off out of there. But whether Levy's going to pull the trigger on him, whether they come to a mutual arrangement, but it was an absolute outburst from the manager. It was up there with the Nathan Jones one, wasn't it? To be fair, it was probably a bit worse than the Nathan Jones one.
Yeah, it was absolutely bizarre, wasn't it? I mean, what was he saying? It's the history of this club. The same owner, 20 years, they haven't won nothing, and it was almost like he was blaming the player culture over anything, saying sort of, well, they've had this amount of quality coaches and nobody's succeeded, and why do you think that is, sort of thing. It'd be, like you say, I've heard about it all week, and it's going to be very, very interesting to see what Levy does with it. But I think those players need to pull their finger out their ass and get a result against Everton for the good of everybody. But we'll see. We will see what happens there. We take the point. We love a manager meltdown. I'll was a quick word about Lavia at the end, because he sort of I was stand at the bottom and sort of wait for the players at the end to do their lap, and because I'm always interested to see who leads it, who doesn't, who's not involved, who walks down the tunnel, all that sort of thing. So I sort of stick about and have a look. And Romeo Lavia was sort of stood in front of the Northern end applauding for a couple of minutes, and then the players sort of wandered over, and then they started to move over, and he sort of shouted at them and said, "No, everyone over here quickly." And then Ward-Prowse sort of led him over, and everybody came over. And Lavia was sort of pointing to the ground like that, sort of going like that. What he meant by that, I'm not sure. I mean, a lot of people sort of took it as like, we're here. This is what we're going to carry on doing. We'll see. But yeah, and then Ward-Prowse at the end, sort of pumping the badge is always a nice one. It'd be nicer if he stays at the end of the season rather than keep pumping the badge and go down. But that's that's one that time will tell. But we take a point. I wasn't overly pleased with it because of the manner of going through went down, and the starting 11. I think it killed the atmosphere. But we can start strong against West Ham, which we will cover in more depth next week. Come back for that next week. But if we can get a strong start against West Ham, I think it'll be our game to lose, because they're not a great side either. Moving on from that, we'll now be talking a bit about England, who are actually sort of playing at the moment. We've got Italy in a European qualifier, but I did want to talk about obviously the Ward-Prowse situation with Gareth Southgate. But what do you make of Southgate as a manager, Martin? Do you think that England will actually will we win at anything under Southgate, or do we wait to the next one? Because this is a talented bunch, isn't it, really?
It's a really talented bunch, but there's not a lot coming through after it. So there's a real opportunity at this moment in time. I think he even spoke when he announced his squad last week that the next pool coming through, it's going to be a while to really pull some players through, and there's certain positions they're a little bit concerned about. That he's got a fantastic group of players, but as we've seen through the tournaments, he picks not always. There's very much. I always thought he was going to pick players on form for their clubs, but that's not happening, is it? Because he's picking players that are not in form. Harry Maguire is not in form for his club at all, but he's still getting selected, and I find that alone baffling. I think anybody in the country does. He's done a really good job for England when he plays for England, but what hope does that give to Tomori, who's doing amazing at AC Milan? I watched him in the Champions League against Spurs, and he's quick, he's fast, he's young, he's hungry, but he looks a real deal as a central defender. Surely we got to be giving him a bit of belief he can get into the national side, because we have to be picking people like him. But no, I don't think we'll win anything under Gareth Southgate. I think we've got no chance. I think he's too cautious in the way he wants to play. And the other one I want to talk about is Calvin Phillips. Calvin Phillips has done nothing this season. Nothing. And when we saw him at St Mary's, Romeo Lavia, 19-year-old, ran him off the park. He made him look poor. Like, really poor. Like, how is he getting in? What are they seeing in the bloke? Yeah, he might have had a good time a couple of years ago. That was a couple of years ago. He's playing for Leeds. He's not getting in the Man City side, so how can he get in the national side? I don't know what you think about it.
I'm very much of the same opinion. I'll talk about the midfield a bit more in depth here, because it's intriguing. And the buck doesn't just stop at Calvin Phillips, even though that is the most puzzling one, in my opinion. I will just mention quickly on the defence, I do feel for the likes of Fikayo Tomori, who is missing out to the likes of Maguire and Gahey. Less Gahey, at least he's playing games. And it kind of defeats my argument about what I'm going to say about Prowsey. But Maguire's a head scratcher. Didn't think he should have been going to the World Cup, like a lot of people. How can you when he's not playing football? You can have loyalty to an extent as an England manager, but come on, mate, seriously, it's a joke. Midfield, this is a baffling one. So I put this tweet out on our Twitter after, pretty much in the immediate aftermath of the team selection coming out, and there was quite a response on it. So it's got 490 likes. It reached about 40,000 people. Most of which I will assume will be Three Lions fans, looking at immediate reaction to that sort of squad. Now, I tweeted in the Premier League this season, and this was facts of, at the time. This is before Prowsey got his next goal against Tottenham. Prowsey had played 27 matches, 6 goals, 2 assists. Mount for 23 games, 3 goals, 3 assists. Conor Gallagher, 23 games, 1 goal, 1 assist. Jordan Henderson, 23 games, 0 goals, 1 assist. Calvin Phillips, 3 games, 0 goals, 0 assists. It might not be everything, the goals and assists, but when you dig sort of deeper into it, right, and you look at the likes of, for example, I'll go Mount and Gallagher first. If they're not able to do their job to a higher standard with players behind them, such as Kante, Kovacic, Thiago Silva, and then you look forward and they've got these record-breaking players like Mudryk, João Felix, Madueke, Raheem Sterling, all of these, superstars around them, and they still can't seem to provide or score goals, then that says a lot on its own to me. Jordan Henderson, again, is a baffling one. I think it was Roy Keane said, I can't remember whether it was Roy Keane, but he said it a while ago when Henderson was being picked, and someone sort of justified it by saying, well, yeah, he's good for the group, and he does stuff around the camp. And he said, well, are you going to pick a player because he sings karaoke and plays cards? Like, are you going to really take a slot up because of that? And I agree with him. I think it's a joke. He's absolute pants, Jordan Henderson. I've never rated him. And Calvin Phillips playing, what was it? I think it was 58 minutes of football in the Prem all season. After being injured for a good 80-90% of last season, we should add as well. Baffling, absolutely baffling. Who would you have had in over these guys, Martin? Obviously, Ward-Prowse, I assume. But there was other contenders in there. We're talking sort of people like Solly March, and you did mention Gibbs White as well before we come in.
He's played really well for Forest. He's been the best player. I chatted to a Premier League player today. They played Forest a couple of weeks ago, and he said that there's two standout players for them, and Gibbs White is one of them. I think he's a really good player. He looks, but obviously he's not going to get a look in if he's. But they talk about Phillips. I'm just at the time of recording that the England-Italy game is underway, and I'm reading a few Twitter comments. They're all saying how rusty Phillips looks like. Well, that's pretty obvious. He's going to be rusty. I just don't get these selections. I just don't get it. And Maguire starting tonight. How is he starting? I find it baffling. But yeah, you got to pick people on form. You got to look around and see who's performing. Ward-Prowse has been good since Christmas for us. You can't fault him. He was being superb. He scored some really good free kicks. He was great at Fulham, wasn't he? He was at Everton when we come back. Through the whole melee of all this awful time that we've had as a football club, he's been one man that works really, really hard. He doesn't ever really give the ball away. He brings a lot more than what Calvin Phillips does for me as a player. Loads more.
I agree. Totally agree. There's plenty of depth in that midfield position, in those midfield positions. And the fact that you had the likes of Mason Mount and Marcus Rashford drop out and Southgate decided not to select anybody else to come up into the team, but did decide to replace, I can't remember who the goalkeeper was. I think it was Pope who dropped out, replaced him with Fraser. It just shows how defensive-minded Southgate is as a manager. He doesn't want to upset the apple cart up front. Rashford dropping out would have been an absolutely golden opportunity to pick someone on merit, on form, who's playing out of their skin. Someone, for example, like following Balogun, who's on loan from Arsenal in France at the moment, playing for Reims. He scored, I think, it's 19 league goals this season. I think he's the second top goal scorer in Ligue 1 behind Kylian Mbappe. This guy is a good player, and the disrespect. I mean, even players like Eddie Nketiah, you're not getting a look in. Rashford's dropped out. What is the harm? Just get him up amongst the group. You never know. What's the worst that can happen? And yeah, you look at players like Solly March, who could have come up, and like you said, Gibbs White, and it just feels like a real sort of smaller club sort of bias against teams that are sort of either smaller or down there and don't have as much history. And it's just pathetic, really. Because if you can do it at a top level in a team that isn't at your level, it just shows how good you are as a footballer, in my opinion. So yeah, I don't think we're going to win anything under Southgate. Although I think we have just scored as I'm saying that. I don't think we're going to win any trophies under Gareth Southgate.
The other one was Ollie Watkins. He never got a look in. He's been in really good form last couple of months.
Yeah, there's plenty, and there's plenty to choose from. I think it's just disrespectful to other clubs. But yeah, I think England have just scored. I can't guarantee it, but yeah, I think we've just scored. But either way, I don't think trophy-wise we won't win anything under Gareth Southgate. I don't know who the next manager could be. Obviously, talks of people like Poch or Tuchel, which would be interesting to see if that ever happened. But that's one for the future. Got to qualify for the Euros first. So back to Southampton. I do want to look forward a little bit because we will cover West Ham next week. But I do want to look forward to next season, and I want to do it now before we know our fate because it's harder. I feel like there's plenty of options, but let's talk about it raw. Let's talk about it right now. We're going to go through our 30-man squad as it is right now, and we are going to say whether we think we should sell them, loan them, or keep hold of them for next season. Now, some of these might be out of our hands, out of the club's hands, but this is our opinion on who will stay, who will go, and who we should be looking to send on loan for a season. I think it's right we start with the goalies. Martin, what do you think? So let's start with obviously Gavin. I think that's a pretty safe keep for me. What about you?
Yeah, Gavin's got to stay. I think whatever league we're in next year, he'd be our number one. I don't think there's any about that. I just need a good backup behind him. So you go on to the understudies.
Exactly that. So the other goalkeepers, Maka, he's an interesting one. I think Willie's contract runs out, so that's gonna be an interesting one. But McCarthy, what do you reckon with him?
I think he'd go. Alex McCarthy, I think his time's up at the football club. His body language speaks volumes, but he did get a contract about a year ago. It depends how long that contract was. He might be just on the tick down, but I think if they can get rid of him, they'll probably get rid of him and bring another experienced goalkeeper in. I would think they will. We need an experienced goalkeeper there. Willie will definitely go. There's no doubt that he won't sign another contract, but he's taken his the goalkeeping badges, Europa badges that they do. I'm not sure what the actual name of the badges they do, but he's done his coaching badges. So what's the chances that he might take the sideward step? They like him at the football club. I know that. He lives in the area. He'll probably end up on the goalkeeping department with Andrew Sparks, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think that's probably safe to say. He'll stick around in some sort of format, won't he? But yeah, McCarthy again. Interesting to see where that one goes because, like you say, he signed a contract, but it was never announced that he'd signed a contract, and it was really weird at the end of last season with contracts because the club stated that they'd offered Shane Long a contract extension, and I think it was actually Shane Long's wife that come out and said, "Well, you haven't, unless our phone numbers stayed the same for the past." I think she actually said our phone numbers stayed the same for the past 10 years. So what's your excuse, sort of thing? Like they never got, So and then a week later he'd been released. So very interesting because they never said how long it was or that he'd even signed it, unless it was. I mean, they put it in small print, but nothing about the details. So but yeah, I'd probably let McCarthy move on. I'd say sell him, bring in someone with a bit more experience, but not quite Willie Caballero experience. Maybe someone who can still do a job, but who is better than McCarthy. On to defenders. There's a few no-brainers in here. I think we can probably say the likes of KWP, Bellacott, chaps, Salisu, Livramento, these guys, they're probably all keeps, right? I don't think there's any arguments there. Interesting ones. Lianco. What do you do with Lianco?
Depending on the division they're in, but I'm not convinced he'd be any good in the Championship, if I'm honest. I'd probably like to see him go, to be honest. I'd rather see Kaleta stay, in my opinion. I think he's better in the air. I think he's a more physical defender. I think he's a bit more rounded. I'm still surprised that he's nowhere near this squad. But no, I would let Lianco go, to be honest. I think they were pretty close to letting him go in the summer, but obviously it didn't come off with the Turkish club and he didn't go. But for me, let him go.
Yeah, I think if we can get back what we paid for Lianco and let him try and find his feet somewhere else, because he's clearly a good person. He clearly plays with a lot of passion. There's no debating that. But yeah, let him get a good fee. Let him find his feet somewhere else, and maybe he's got a future in the Premier League at some point, but it's probably not right now. Roman Perot, interesting. I think that's. I mean, for me, I'd keep him. It'd be a bit silly to let him go, but what do you think?
Yeah, I'd keep him no matter what division we're in. I think if we're in the Premier League or the Championship, I think he'd do a good job in the Championship. He'd probably be a good learning place for him. I think he's learning. I think he's improving. I think he's really good. He's got a great shot on him. We've seen good goals from the boy. He looks really good in and around the edge of the opposition's box. Sometimes I think he's a little bit suspect in defending. He's a little bit 100 miles an hour. But I think there's a good player there. He's one for the future, that for me. He will only get better, Roman Perot, in my opinion.
I agree. He has still got years on his side as well. Chaleta Sarr is the next one. For me, that's an easy keep. Like you said, I think you said there as well, you'd keep him because of his ability in the air. And obviously, I mean, he's such a good player, and it's a shame to see him on the edge at the moment. Jan Bednarek. What do you do with Yanni B, Martin?
I think he would probably go. at the end of the season. I'm not sure his stay. I'm not sure what his contract's like. Maybe there's another year on it. That would he want to drop down and play in the Championship? I probably think he would think he's better than that from the way we know he talks. He's done all right, isn't he? Last couple of weeks he's done better. Do I think we can get a better defender? Do I think we've got better defenders at the club already? Yeah, I do think we've got better than him already. That he's come in and done a bit of a job for us. Depending on the manager, I can't see him wearing a Southampton shirt next season. I might be wrong, but I think it would be unlikely if if I'm honest, in either division, that I'd rather we moved him on now. To be honest.
Yeah, I think it'd be wise if we can get some decent pennies for him, let him go. The last two defenders are actually quite good. I'm going to throw a loan in here. I think probably depends on what division we're in and the sort of players that we lose. But right now, say we stay up, I think Juan Larios would probably benefit from a loan move. And James Bree, I just don't see. I think I'd rather give an academy fullback a place in the starting 11. I think if we could sell him for 2 or 3 million, considering we bought him for what was it, 700k, you can call that good business and move on. I think. What do you reckon?
I just think it was a nothing signing. I think they wanted cover at fullback because of Livramento's injury. But look, I don't see, that if we're in the Championship, they may keep hold of him. Maybe, to be honest, it depends on Tino's injury and if they can get him fit. Look, if we're in the Premier League, I wouldn't want to see him near the Premier League. I don't think he's good enough for the Premier League from what I've seen. I'd definitely look to let him go. Larios, like you say, he probably needs to go out and develop now, like Smallbone and Teller have done. There's definitely a player in there. We've seen a fair bit of potential from him, but he's young. So short for a defender, though, isn't he? Yeah, it's an interesting signing, that one. I'm not sure, and I'm not convinced that one will work out long term. Larios.
No, I'm not overly convinced of that either. Obviously, there's a few givens in the midfield as well. That's if we can keep hold of these guys. Ward-Prowse is a keep, without a doubt. Romeo Lavia is a keep, without a doubt. I think not many people would say sell on someone like Kamaldeen Sulemana. He would be a keep. Someone like Alcaraz is a keep. The rest of it is quite interesting. Let's get into it. So, Stewie Armstrong. Have we seen enough of Stu, or is it? Do we keep hold of him?
He'll go into the season. I think. I think we talk about players that are done at the football club. I think his time's up. I don't think he's the player that he probably once was for us. Don't think he brings as much to the party as he may be used to. He was more influential, wasn't he, in Hassan Hotel's early days? But I think it's definitely time to move him on, mate. His contract, he has another year, I believe, but I would let him go now, to be honest. I don't in either division. I don't think he'd probably drop down to the Championship anyway. But there's talk that he'd go back to Scotland. That's already been spoke about already. Doesn't look particularly happy with his body language at times this year. He's been so in and out of the side. He's struggled to get any consistency. He's had a lot of injuries as well. But yeah, I think it'd be a player that will definitely be moved on. Be sad to see him go. He's been a good servant to the football club. But it's this last sort of like 12 to 18 months has been really tough for the boy.
Yeah, I'm of the same opinion. I think probably if we can get good money for Stu, from the likes of a Celtic, I probably wouldn't like to see him go to another Premier League team. But beggars can't be choosers. If you get good money for him, you get good money for him. Musa, for me, this is quite easy. Actually, Musa and Moy are put in the same bracket, but for different reasons. Musa, bless his heart, he tried. I just don't think he's good enough at all. And Moy, I just full stop don't think he's anywhere near good enough. Do you challenge any of them, or do you agree?
No, Moy's contract's out there. They'll let him go, I would think. But then nothing surprises me with this football club. Musa ended up with the contract extension. He had that little start at the start of the season, and he done quite well at left back. He filled in when we had no left back, and then all of a sudden he gets a contract extension. And who the heck sanctioned that? because I just don't rate the boy. I just don't see what he brings to the party. I really don't. I think I think in the championship he'd be a headless chicken, to be quite honest. I think he's a player. If you can get your money back and get rid of him, maybe they give him the contract with a view that they might better get. That it was ticking down, that they'd better flog him. I think he'd definitely get flogged. But don't be surprised, mate, if you see Ali Nusi given another contract in the next few weeks. It'd be horrific if they did, because it's time to move on and bring better to the football club. I think we have better at the football club already. We've got better out on loan already. You'll probably touch upon the players that are potentially coming back, but there are players still. But whether they come back or not, I'm sure I'll leave that one to you, mate.
Yeah. We'll sort of have a little roundup of those boys at the end. But I agree. Moy, he's got to go. If we do sign him again, it makes you question the ambition. Sort of, you look at if the board and that sanctioning a contract for him, they're looking at him and thinking that he's good enough to play for the football club and to improve the football club going forward. Which, in my opinion, he's not good enough to improve himself, let alone the football club. So yeah, he's done. No hard feelings, Moy. You're just not up to it, mate. You seem to smash it in Scotland. I'd recommend sort of popping back there. Ibrahima Diallo is interesting because he's still young and he has these flashes, and sometimes he can step in and be useful. I say keep as a squad depth option, but what do you reckon?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Yeah, I think he's an option to have in around the squad. I don't like fans get on his back really easy, but technically he's quite a good player, isn't he? He's obviously going to develop as well, and he needs a bit of time. It's just whether he's prepared to be that bit part player, or he wants to go and really progress his career a bit more. I think in the Championship, like with a really good holding midfielder, with someone that's going to battle win the ball, he's technically really good. Just depending, I think if we're in the Premier League, he might just be a player that they let go. I think it's a tight one with him, really. I don't dislike him. I think he brings something to the party. But there's a lot of fans that hate the boy. They just don't rate him, do they?
Yeah, he has got a club of them who put him in the Moy camp. I don't think he's that bad. We've seen him put in some good performances, unlike Moy. He's got it in him. Probably a useful squad player. Our number 7, Joe Aribo. For me, it's a no-brainer. We have to keep hold of him and we have to utilise him because I think he's been wildly disrespected for the talent that he's got this season. Do you think that maybe he might benefit from moving somewhere else, or would you like to see him stay as well?
I'd like to see someone get hold of him and get the best out of him, because he's obviously he's a decent player. I think he was an absolute steal when they brought him in. I think Simmons had spoke, didn't you? I think he spoke on the podcast about last week. They were delighted to bring him in when they did. I think he was a player they were looking at for a long time. I'd be surprised to let him go. I think in either division, either the Premier League or the Championship next season, I think he will, under the right manager and the right guidance, someone will get the better out of him. But we need to give him a little bit more time. It's so quick to write a player off in football, but I like to see him stay, and I like to see someone get their arm around him and get the best out of him, because he could be a real asset in either division, in my opinion.
I agree. I've been calling out for him to be involved in the squad, so I really hope somebody gets hold of him and does exactly that. This one's interesting because it's not sell, loan, or keep, because it's technically he's not our player. So Maitland-Niles, for me, if we can get him at the right price, it seems a bit of a silly. It would seem silly not to. If you can get him on a decent contract for the right price, it seems silly not to, purely because of how versatile he is and how willing he now is to play those other positions. Because I seem to remember we went for him a few years ago when he chose West Brom and ultimately got relegated, because we said to him, Ainsley, we need you to play in different positions because we know you're capable. And he said, no, I'm a centre mid full stop. And we said, well, we can't promise you that. So he went somewhere else. He's had a few years since then, and he seemed to really embrace that use of, the sort of player he is. He's filling in at centre half is a prime example. What do you reckon? Do you think it would maybe be a wasted signing, or do you think a worthwhile signing if we were to keep him on?
I think he's improved as the season has gone on. I had a lot of reservations about him under Hasenhüttl, especially under Jones. It was clear that he didn't like Jones. He did down tools a little bit, and I was a bit disappointed with some of his body language. And I singled him out on Twitter at one stage because he did annoy me in some of his performances. I think he was lacklustre. Would I keep him if we're in the Premier League? I think he'd be a really good squad player if you could keep him. I do. I think he's an option. He's an option that I think he's done well when he's gone in at fullback. He done a decent job at the weekend. I think wages would be an issue. There's no doubt about that. And I think that they obviously want money for him. So do I think he'll stay realistically? No, I don't think he'll stay. Will Arsenal keep him? I don't think Arsenal want him, because if they did, he'd be getting a run. He's not favoured there, is he, at all? He's like his second, third loan move. There's obviously a player there who's got a bit about him. I think he's got some talent, let down by some poor attitude at times.
Yeah, I think he has let himself down a couple of times, but there's clearly a talented player in there. To be able to walk about a pitch and play in those sort of positions and play them all competently is should not be underestimated. And I think, if we can get him on a real cut price from an Arsenal side, they'll be looking on to much better things next season, regardless of how it finishes. And if we can do better on his wages than we did for someone like Walcott, for example, I think it makes sense. So yeah, I mean, chatting about Theo, it makes sense to start with him now because I've mentioned him. But this front line, I'm looking at it, and there's a lot in here that is debatable. Start with Theo. There's no automatic stays in this. What do you think? Obviously, I know his contract's up at the end of the summer. Do you offer him another one, or
they won't offer him another one? The club won't. I wouldn't have thought so. I think he'll retire. My gut feeling is I think Theo will retire at the end of the season. He's come back south where he grew up. I think him and his wife are settled down here. They like it down here. He's constantly sneaking into the media. I think he's made it quite clear that he wants to go into media work. He's quite good at it as well, actually. I listen to Talk Sport a lot during the week, and he's writing in quite a bit now. There's no doubt that that's the route he'd go down. I don't think he'd go into a coaching role. I think he's a great ambassador for our football club. So I like to think that, I know they use Benali a lot as an ambassador for our football club at this moment in time. But if they want to reconnect with like some of the younger fans, everybody loves Theo Walcott. So if he does decide to retire, I really hope that the club do something with him, because I don't think he'd coach, but to have him involved at the football club would be fantastic. One thing I would say about Theo, whenever I've seen him and I've been around the clubs, I've been to the training days, my daughters have stayed and got autographs afterwards. He doesn't miss a human being when it comes to doing a signature or doing a selfie. I know he gets a bit of stick for it, but I think he's a great man for our football club. So I hope he's looked after it in some way or form, but I don't think it'd be as a player. I think his legs are gone, and I think he knows it as well. And I just hope we don't get relegated, because for him, he won't want to finish on a relegation. I just wonder if that will play a little bit of his decision making. Will he go off to America maybe for one final payday? I don't think he's a man that needs any money, though, as Theo Walcott.
No, I think he's done all right. Yeah, I mean, like you said, he grew up. I think it was Winchester area, and he met his missus down here, so she's from here. All his family are from here. Yeah, he's clearly loves the city. It's his city, so it would be good to have him involved in some capacity. Like you say, I agree. It's probably his last hurrah, his last sort of push, final stretch, which is probably why we're seeing all these unbelievable performances all of a sudden. But yeah, I agree. I think he's better off doing something like media. He's going to earn more money for it. He's going to be, people listen to him because he's been about, England, Arsenal, Champions League, and all of this stuff. He's a good player. He's had a great career. I think I can see that that's how that one ends. Adam Armstrong. I think it's pretty strong from you on your views on Adam Armstrong. I am of the same sort of opinion. As much as I've backed him, said he will score. It's just not happening. I think he's done. Do you want to confirm you think he's done as well?
I'm just looking at the contract. So I'm looking at the length of his contract. Alarming. 2025. His contract expires. That is ridiculous. I think he's done at the football club. I think he's been done for a while. I think they'll sell him. I don't, even if we go to if we get relegated and we end up in the Championship, I think he's lost his confidence and he needs to go and start. He probably needs to go home. He needs to go back north to where he's from, resettle and try and get his football career going, because he's obviously he was a decent player, had a great time at Blackburn, but it's just not worked out for him down here. And time for a change. I don't want to see him in either league with us next season. In my personal opinion, people say he dropped down the Champions, score a load of goals. Bet you he didn't. If we do, I bet you he doesn't. If he stays, bet he won't stay.
Yeah, I think it's curtains for Armstrong. Che Adams. Che Adams. Do you keep Che? Do you try and cash in?
Well, Everton wants Che Adams. There's no doubt that if we get relegated, I think he will be sold. He will want to move away. I'd love to see him stay because I think he's got another year on his contract. He's got another year, so the club can keep hold of him. The one good thing, the interesting thing that come out of the fans for him that I should touch on really, and anyone was there would say the same, is that they were very adamant. Rasmus and his board, that if they get relegated, they feel they have the financial backing to not make major changes, and that was to the playing squad as well, the playing staff. They were confident that they would be able to keep a lot of the players if they wanted to. So if they wanted to keep him and he wanted to stay, he's a man you've got to keep, because I think in that division he score a lot of goals. I think he score a lot of goals in that league.
I agree. Another man I think would score a lot of goals in that league. Actually, two men who I think would score a lot of goals in that league is Paul Nuachu and Mislav Orsic. I think they would absolutely have a field day. The only thing is I think Paul's a stay. I think we've put too much of a gamble on him to get rid of him that quickly. Mislav's a different one because we got him at a very, very good price for the player he is. Again, like Joe Aribo, I am baffled and irritated that Mislav Orsic is not being allowed the chance to settle himself into the Premier League. We've seen him playing in a couple of cup games. It doesn't really tell you anything because the cup has a completely different attitude, atmosphere, and everything around it to anything, any league whatsoever. And the man's clearly got caliber. What's your feeling on Mislav? Do you think the club will try and probably sell him back to probably Zagreb, to be fair?
I'm gutted it's not worked out because I was really excited when he signed. I thought he was a man of good caliber. He played in World Cups. I've seen some of his goals. I think he scored a hat-trick maybe against West Ham that I watched a couple of years ago in the Europa League, and he looked a class player. I think he is extremely talented. For some reason, it's not worked for him here. Look, it's a massive contract that they've given him. He's not on a small sum of money, and I imagine if he's not going to feature and he's not going to become a part of our squad, they will have to cash in on him. The contract terms on that, it was a 3-year contract. It was a mega deal, 10.5 million contract. It's crazy. It's crazy, but I don't think he wanted to come here. I really don't. It doesn't look like a man that wants to be here. And that's why he's not featuring.
Yeah, gutting, because what a player, just absolutely gutting that we've not utilised him or made the best of him. Ruben keeps saying he's a top fella and he really wants to try and carry on working hard, and he's communicated with him that if he carries on and all that, but a lot of it I feel like is manager talk. So we'll see that one, however that one plays out. I don't think I could blame him either way. Just a shame, really. I think Samuel Edozie, we would be ridiculous to sell him or loan him, regardless of what division we're in next season. I think he should be playing now, and he should be playing next season. Sekou Mara, for me, I don't sell him yet because he's still young, but I'd send him out on loan next year. What do you reckon?
Depending on the league, I think if we're still in the Premier League and we manage to stay up by the skin of our teeth, he definitely probably needs a loan move. He needs to stay in England. I wouldn't let him go back to France. I'd let him stay in England and develop in England. I heard someone else speaking about it at the game the weekend. If you're going to send him on loan, keep him in England. I think if we drop to the Championship, do you know what? I don't think he'd do a bad job, and I think they may just keep him. I think I was disappointed with him early on, but he's got better. He's adapting, like we said earlier on in the show. It's whether the Championship's a physical, tough league. Will he tough it out in the Championship? Be interesting to see. Be interesting to see. I wouldn't want him to see him as our number one striker if we're in the Championship. You need a goal scorer, and whether he'd score enough goals, don't know. I think he's still too young at this moment in time, but I agree with you. Get him out on loan, try and develop in England.
Yeah, I think it's almost a no-brainer with that one. Other ones I want to chat about quickly, that is the bulk of the squad, but I want to talk about a couple of chaps who've been on loan. So quick ones on Nathan Tella, Will Smallbone, and also I want to chat about the likes of a couple of youth players. So people like Don Ballard and Kamari Doyle. Those two guys, personally, I would love to see try and push on, carry on the great work they're having with the B team. And if they get their chance in the first team, take it with both hands, because we have really been lacking that academy pathway the past couple of years. It'd be great to see someone come in and really, take that chance. Nathan Teller's stats speak for themselves, Martin. But Will Smallbone sort of somewhat flown under the radar until the past month or two, when people at Stoke have really been raving about how good he's been consistently. He made his first senior appearance for the Ireland national squad and got man of the match in his first game. Do you think, like Ruben Sellers, do you think that Will deserves a chance to try and stake a claim next season?
Yeah, he got thrown in against Watford back end of last season by Hasenhüttl coming out of the cold from nowhere. Hardly been in the squads, been on the bench, hardly played, and you got thrown in. And it wouldn't have done his confidence any good. It was a tough game as it was that day, and we got beaten and well beaten. And he took a bit of flack. He got pulled off. He maybe got pulled off at half time, if I remember rightly. I always thought he was technically a really good player. They raved about him at the football club. I've spoke to a few people at Stoke, and the people I speak to have said he's been superb for them this season. He's got better more as the season's gone. And it was all about the same with Nathan. We said about it on the podcast last week. It was about that consistency, being given that environment to thrive, to keep playing. One thing that we don't do as a football club very well is we chop and change and chop and change, and we don't give players a real proper chance. He just needed a chance at Stoke, and he's done well. I think, depending on the league, he come back to Southampton Football Club, and he's he could be a really good player for us. Especially like if we were in the Championship, he'd be in starting 11, I would think. Nathan Tella, like you said, his stats speak for themselves. I think the really disappointing thing that I heard, and I think it's how valued by the football club will he feel, because I think he's come out on record and he said that Nathan Jones, who was the manager at Southampton Football Club, in the January transfer window, didn't even pick the phone up and have a conversation with him. That's poor, and he should have done, because he's done well, and I think he's the sort of player that we want to come back to our football club. I'd like to see Nathan Tella come back. Will he come back? I think they might just cash in on him if they get the right offer for him. It just depends what that offer is, but he looks to business, doesn't he? Whenever I've seen him, he looks class. If we go down to the Championship, you want him in our side, but obviously he's going to want to play in the Premier League. He's going to want to play in the Premier League now, so you would imagine he's going to force a move.
Yeah, and I think it also depends a lot on who stays and who goes in certain positions. Because if we do see the likes of Armstrong and Elyounoussi go in, and if Mislav also goes, I feel like it's naturally a chance for Teller to come in and prove himself, because he last season his appearances off the bench under Hasenhüttl, some of them were brilliant. He changed games and he's electric, but it was clear that he needed that consistent chance to start games, and it's come this season. And what a way to learn. Great manager to learn it under. Seems like a really good environment for him to be learning. It's just whether Burnley do come in for that to, offer us that money. It's a bit of a win-win with him, because if he stays, we've clearly got a good talent, and if he goes, we can get some good money, because he's proven he's a good talent. So either way, I'd be happy. But yeah, I think Will Smallbone is going to get a chance next season, from what's been said from Ruben. People in the press seem to really like him. And yeah, Southampton lad. I think he's definitely gonna get a chance at least. So yeah, I think that's the squad done. I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head right now that I do want to cover. We did mention people like Matthias Liz, didn't we, before?
Yeah, we did talk about him. Mario
yeah.
Lavia, we've not spoke about. Obviously, we want him to stay. I think we're realistic that big clubs are going to come knocking the door for him. He's a player that, if we're in the Premier League, you want to keep him for one more season. They want to do everything they can. He's got a long contract. He's got a 5-year contract, but they're going to get big offers for the boy. Just worth touching on while we spoke about England. Harry Kane's just scored a penalty for England, and he's beaten the record. What an incredible! Got to give him a shout out, haven't we? What a great striker he's been for our national team, Harry Kane. And he'll score many more as well. So congratulations to Harry Kane.
Absolutely, congratulations. I still don't think he should be captain. I don't like a striker as a captain, but that's another Southgate masterclass there. But no, well done, well done. That's a lot of goals, and yeah, long may you continue scoring them, please. Because if we ain't got Kane, we ain't got goals. So yeah, that's really good. So I think that's a positive note to end on. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Martin, thank you so much for joining me. As always, it's an absolute pleasure. Next week we will have a couple of special guests on, so please do keep an eye on our social media channels because we want you to be involved. And there will be an opportunity for our fan base to ask some questions to said special guests. Keep an eye out for that to see who it is and listen in for next week where you will hear that and our preview for our monumental fixture at the London Stadium against West Ham. Again, thank you, Martin, for coming on. If you would like to keep
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you for tuning in, guys. Hope you've enjoyed our podcast.
Always. So yeah, if you'd like to keep up to date, drop us a follow on Spotify. It will notify you as soon as an episode is launched on there. Same with Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. And if you subscribe on our YouTube channel as well, you will get notified when we upload a video. On YouTube, we don't just upload the whole podcast. We split it into bits. So if you don't have time to listen to the whole thing, you can hone in on the bits you'd like to listen to. So that's always worth noting. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody, for listening. And we hope to have your ears again next week.